Let the hearts of those who seek the Lord rejoice. Amen. Was it a lovely connection? Just a coincidence? Or was God having some fun with us here at St. John's? On Ash Wednesday, a couple of master gardeners came to St. John's to meet with a garden team planning the Creation Care Garden near the ramp and the new staircase entrance, the staircase near the solarium. The master gardeners arrived with their clipboards, their pruning tool on their hip, very sensible shoes and hat, and asked a lot of questions. The master gardeners were interested in the sunlight for the area, how the soil was drained, and in the quality of the soil itself and how the land sloped. I realized their questions and visit were to help us figure out what plants would root well and thrive in this area. What were the conditions that whatever we planted would be rooted in good soil so the plants would bloom and prosper? It was a perfect introduction to Lent, to our Lenten theme, Rooted in Love. Instead of a garden, we are asking ourselves what we need to do to be rooted in love so that we can love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our strength, and our neighbors as ourselves. What was happening outside the church in the garden was matching what we were doing inside the church. So I think God was having some fun with us. On Ash Wednesday, we are called to observe a holy Lent by reading and meditating on God's holy word, a very good way to be rooted in love. With that in mind, let's examine the gospel for today and hopefully find inspiration that will guide the rest of our Lenten time for 4 weeks. Here is the scene and the context. Jesus and his disciples were walking from Bethsaida north to Caesarea Philippi. My Bible atlas shows that there was a road that connected those two cities. I imagine that Jesus and his disciples walked that road, and I also suspect that his disciples talked along the way with the Lord, and they talked very thoughtfully, because Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And Peter answers, "You are the Messiah." Now, this is where our gospel story picks up. The Lord's heart is very heavy and troubled, and he teaches that the Son of Man, him, must undergo great suffering, be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the religious establishment, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. If you were a disciple hearing this message, you can understand why Peter rebuked him. I can see Peter thinking, "This is no way to encourage people to follow you, Lord. Stop saying these scary things about suffering, rejection, and death." But Jesus continues and not only talks to the disciples, but includes the crowd that is walking with him. Jesus clearly says, "Whoever wants to follow me must take up his cross." And finally, Jesus offers the great paradox of losing one's life in order to save it. So here is my question. How did Jesus come to this insight that his ministry of proclaiming the good news would end in rejection by the religious authorities and in his suffering, death, and resurrection? Or to put it another way, what was it about Jesus' teaching and actions that would bring about his suffering and death, but also his resurrection? I think we can find some insight into those questions in our in our collect this morning. It is right there in the opening sentence. O God, whose glory it is always to have mercy. O God, whose glory it is to always have mercy. Jesus, as God's Son, shares this quality to always have mercy. You see this quality of mercy in Jesus' many responses to those who are sick or troubled in spirit. For example, a leper came begging him, kneeling, said to Jesus, "If you choose, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, Jesus stretched out his hand, touched the man with leprosy, something forbidden by the law, and he said to him, "I do choose, I am willing, be made clean." Jesus was merciful. Twice in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is among thousands of people who listen to his teaching, and he looks on them with compassion because they are hungry and are like sheep without a shepherd. He sees their need, multiplies some bread and fish, and mercifully feeds those who are hungry. Jesus' response to those in need was a challenge to the religious authorities. Jesus' preaching of good news was matched with actions of healing, casting out troubled spirits, and feeding people who are hungry. Jesus was merciful. Jesus was not correcting legalistic Judaism as much as he was channeling the long-standing Jewish belief in God's compassion for the marginalized and the outcast. It is an occupational hazard of all religious traditions of the East and the West to get caught up in the accidentals of faith and forget the charge that we are to love God and to take care of one another. How can this difficult teaching of Jesus guide our Lenten journey as followers of the Lord? How can we show mercy? What does it mean to act with mercy, to be merciful? The Oxford English Dictionary refers to acts of mercy as acts of compassion towards suffering fellow creatures. It includes forbearance and compassion shown by one person to another. It is interesting that the French word for thank you is merci. We have another depth of meaning when we look to the Hebrew language for insights about mercy and what it means. In the biblical Hebrew language, the word for mercy, rachem, shares the exact same three-letter root word as the word for womb, rechem. Based on the close linguistic connections between these two terms, God's mercy toward humanity denotes the same kind of protection that a baby has in its mother's womb. Divine mercy is a protective force that the Bible compares with the shelter of a mother's womb. So how do we show mercy? How do we show it to others, to this community and the larger community? Our culture values speed, efficiency, and moving on to the next task of your to-do list, frequently planning more than you can reasonably accomplish. Be merciful. Give yourself enough time to do whatever task you have in front of you. Don't rush. Be present to yourself and take note of the moment. We are human beings made in God's image, not machines. There are 2 Sunday programs that I participate here at St. John's, the Adult Forum, the Bible Challenge, and Holy Households. In both of these places, I experience God's mercy as protective and sheltering. In the Bible Challenge, our discussions lead us to ask profound spiritual questions like, how do I recognize that God is acting in my life? Or what it means when we say, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. The Gospel Challenge is a safe place, a protective place, where as followers of Jesus, we share our faith journey and the questions that journey raises. There is no artifice, but an openness to listen and to share. It is an experience of divine mercy. Holy Households, our intergenerational religious formation program, offers a place where kids can especially be nurtured and introduced to the Bible stories that are the foundations of our faith. Holy Households is a place where the child is the center and adults participate in the faith development of these youngsters in the faith. It too is a safe place where faith and questions about how to live what we believe is shared, and it's fun. This very sanctuary itself, where we all sit together, young and old, for worship, is a place of divine mercy. Some acts of mercy require planning and working. So, for example, helping the Syrian refugee family settle into a new apartment with furniture and moving muscle provided by this community. Acts of mercy require courage, struggle, and as Jesus taught, death. I'm especially mindful of those who gave their lives in the struggle for civil rights in our country. Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Viola Liuzzo, Jonathan Myrick Daniels, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. Acts of mercy are not always warm and fuzzy. And we also remember Alexei Navalny, whose life was taken. Pray for those on the front lines of change. It is dangerous work. Our Lenten poster, Rooted in Love for the first 2 weeks, suggests that we look at the baptismal covenant on pages 304 and 305 on the BCP. As you reflect on these promises, ask yourself, how might I show mercy? Our gospel ends with Jesus teaching that those who want to lose their life will be the ones who will save it. It is a paradox to lose your life in order to save it. Barbara Brown Taylor, Episcopal priest and author, writes that the great wisdom traditions of the world all recognize that the main impediment to living a life of meaning, losing yourself, is being self-absorbed. To focus on the needs of another is to lose yourself in a very real sense. So, for the next 4 weeks of Lent, let's be aware of acts of mercy, big and small. Look for acts of mercy in the news or when you're reading online. Look for stories that require courage and struggle to bring about justice. Offer a merciful response in the marketplace or while driving. Or saying hello to the new kid on the block or sharing a snack. Or bringing food for the food pantry or winter clothes that can be given away. We are called to lose our lives by giving them away, and in so doing, I believe, have an early experience of new life and resurrection. Amen.